Well, there I was on stage on a Friday night inside a public library and performing a murder mystery. And next thing I know, some weirdo that has a bag on top of his head dressed like Batman decided to knee me in the face. And that man now joins me in studio. He is village president of the village of Chatham, Dave Kimsey. Dave, thanks for taking time with us this morning. What happened Friday?
I will say it is amazing how we can go from two characters on the weekend
Yes.
into two completely different characters come Monday morning. But we had a great show with our Chatham Area Public Library District, and their foundation raised a lot of money with a real fun murder mystery. Fun and funny up until the point where we had a rogue scanner that flew up into Greg's face.
Well, okay, so Dave's character was he's the masked superhero who saves the village's grocery store from shoplifters. One of the characters that was just made up out of my mind as the lead in the play, I was writing a murder mystery and I couldn't come up with anything, and all these characters started popping up. Dave was one of them, and at the tail end, he proves that he's not the killer, because if he is the killer, and anytime he commits violence, you see the bang, the boom, the old Batman series from back in the 60s and 70s. But in that, he starts to kind of, mock hitting me, and he had one of those scanners that you see at grocery stores, right? It's a handheld scanner, and it swung up and smacked me right in the face.
We're still trying to figure out where. If it caught on a foot,
yeah,
caught on any of the number of things that were hanging off the costume that went around with the Night Stalker.
That's pretty incredible. Anyway, so that's not why I brought you in here, okay? So just so people know, it's just a fun little segue. But Dave, there's something coming up. Of course, we've been talking a little bit about the elections. Springfield's got, mayoral race and city council races. But down in Chatham, you guys have a question that's up for voters, a couple of questions dealing with cannabis. Tell us what's going on there.
Correct. Back in 2019, just prior to the time that the state began to issue any licenses associated with cannabis facilities, our village board at that time decided, maybe we'll put an outright ban on any type of these businesses locating within the village limits. A lot of the debate that went around putting that ban into place seemed to be, just reliving the same debate that had occurred on the State House. So it was focused more on, should this be a legal industry or not, as opposed to, now this is a legal industry, what role do you want to play in that? So we're 4 years out from that. We've seen this industry start to grow in the state. We've seen, have more evidence behind what's going on and how they're operating. So we have an opportunity with the municipal elections coming up here at the beginning of April to ask our public and our voters, what are your feelings on these issues, and can we use that to guide the next actions that the board takes?
So again, this is not something that voters are going to decide and then all of a sudden the switch is made. This is advisory.
Yeah, both these questions are advisory questions. Typically in April, in this election, what you would see is there's a lot of campaigning going on for trustee positions or mayor positions. We see this in, Springfield is a great example, with a lot of discussion and a lot of people out holding big events, walking in parades, knocking on doors. The spots that are open on our ballot this year, they're all uncontested. So that's kind of muted. And a lot of that face-to-face discussion and a lot more of the intense discussion doesn't occur when you don't have a contested race on it. So in lieu of that, we were able to find a spot that says, look, here's a couple of issues that come up in conversation. How can we get that feedback that you would have normally got through a heated campaign or a contested campaign?
Right. So the questions, you've got two that are going to be on the ballot for voters, advisory questions only, but cover those two questions.
The first question deals primarily with the dispensary. So the retail side of this business is, should the village continue to ban? Should we have this ban in place on a dispensary? And the second question addresses more of the other side of this industry. So should the ban stay in place on production, infusion, distribution, or any of the warehousing side of it? So two questions. They're obviously same topic, but address different components of that.
Yeah, we're talking with Chatham Village President Dave Kimsey here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk and advisory questions on Chatham's ballot for the upcoming April municipal consolidated elections. Dealing with this, it's advisory only, so it's not like if they vote yes or even if they vote no, that it's ultimately going to switch what happens there. It's still going to lead to more conversations about this. So you kind of touched on it, but why now? Why ask these advisory questions now?
Well, I mean, you have the issue with uncontested races, so asking questions at this point in time, it doesn't really dictate anybody's campaign either. It's not used as a tool by one candidate or another, or wouldn't be viewed at that. This is just us asking for opinions, and we've seen historically when we've asked our community for opinions, the last time would have been with our comprehensive plan and large surveys that we facilitated and coordinated with the University of Illinois. People will respond, they give us their answer, and it's kind of a non-threatening way to give your opinion to a board. You don't have to go into a public meeting, sit on a recording on camera, and broadcast your personal thoughts right out to everybody. Thankfully, we have elections. Ballots provide that secrecy. They allow you to express what you're thinking, and you don't have to be criticized for whichever position that you take.
Dave, one of the things that could drive this is the amount of revenue there is. We've seen statewide, it's generated hundreds of millions of dollars of sales tax revenue, billions in dollars of overall sales. Have you looked at how much the village of Chatham could possibly get, especially if it's not just the dollars that the state would send back to Chatham from the program, but even locally, you guys could tack on additional sales tax. Have you looked at how much that could possibly be?
This is one of the rare industries and products that a municipality like Chatham, which is a non-home rule community, has the ability to levy its own tax. So if we were to look at dispensary sales and what an average dispensary is producing and selling across the state, that would equate to, if Chatham adopted, again, one of those decisions we have to make after this, but if we adopt the full amount of tax that we could levy on a dispensary, on average, that starts to look like about $200,000 in additional funding on an annual basis. And that's not insignificant for the village when you put it in perspective with our allocation of the motor fuel taxes that we get from the state's fuel tax to repair our roads, is only about $400,000 a year. Wow. So it's not inconsequential funding. As you look on the second question with production, these are larger facilities, so you start to take into account heavier impact on what real estate taxes would be. Obviously, the bigger facility, the more employees, and it creates jobs. But they're also production in this industry is a utility-heavy industry, so they become substantial utility customers.
Dave, I don't know if you've telegraphed your position on this yet, but with this advisory coming up, I guess my question is, have sentiments changed, right? Since the 1980s, since the 1990s, have sentiments changed of what cannabis is and whether or not it's a dredge on society?
I think that you see that. Obviously, from the 80s and the 90s, when we were in school, the messaging is certainly different. In the last 4 years, I think that there has been some change in the sentiment across the state. We're using these advisory questions as an opportunity to gauge how that sentiment stands and how it may have shifted in the village of Chatham.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Maybe we talk afterwards to see what the next steps are. So Dave Kimsey, the village president of Chatham here in Springfield, joining us on WMAY. Greatly appreciate your time. And, looking real close at the camera, it doesn't look like No, my face was fine.
I'm happy we made it through a session together without me blasting you in the face with something. So,
well, there's nothing close that you can grab. Is there? Okay, that's good.
I could swing this microphone and see what happens.
Probably could. It probably would reach me from there. No, but seriously, greatly appreciate it. And just to reiterate, Friday's show was great. Saturday's show was great. Raising money for the Chatham Area Public Library. Very, very fun stuff. And here's to bigger and better things. All right.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll talk
Appreciate
soon.
the
It is
time.
Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News.